All right, guys, let's get into the conversation. I want to start with a quote by David Gilmour. Again, it comes from this book right here, Manhood in the Making by David Gilmour. And it says, here's the quote: "The real man gains renown by standing between his family and destruction, absorbing the blows of fate with equanimity." That's one of my favorite quotes, and it's really stood out to me as a pretty good encapsulation of what it is that we're supposed to be doing as family men, literally standing between our family and the destruction that they may otherwise experience. So what is this destruction? It could be any number of things. It could be financial catastrophe. It could be health related. It could be a crime or other violent encounters. There's all sorts of things that it could be manifested as and represent itself as. It's our job to ensure that that doesn't happen. It's our job to ensure that we have made ourselves skilled and strong and competent and capable in all ways, so that as these external threats fall upon us and our families, we have the capability of dealing with the threat and then, of course, neutralizing it. So I want to talk with you about that today. We're going to talk about a couple of notes that I had taken down here, but really 4 main strategies that you need to consider, and then we'll break down each one and talk about what specifically you can be doing within each one of those categories. I had made a post several days ago on Instagram, and Instagram isn't the best place for in-depth dissertations on certain subjects, obviously, because you're limited on the amount of information that you can share on a post. That's why I like podcasting so much, because you can get deeper into the subject. And every once in a while I have somebody who says, that's a pretty vague statement, or that's real general, or, why didn't you explain what else we should be doing? Again, it's not the platform for it. So if you're feeling like that on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, then join us here on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because we're going to drill down deeper into it. And that's exactly what I'm going to do with you today. So it's not about pointing out problems. It's about coming up with the solutions to the problems. And by the way, if you have additional comments, thoughts, ideas on what it is I'm going to be addressing today, then drop those below if you're watching on YouTube, or hit me up on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, all at Ryan Mickler. And let's continue the conversation there. All right, so let's break this down into I'm trying to think about how we want to do this the best way. Let's break it down into 4 main categories, we'll call them. 4 main categories that you need to be concerned with when it comes to being the individual, the man who stands between his family and potential destruction. It's going to be rough, financially, physically. Maybe there's some health issues. There's a lot of things that may come up that would keep us from protecting our families and doing what we need to be doing. But in rough times really is where you get to prove your worth as a man. And by the way, I know that ruffles a lot of feathers. Prove your worth as a man. Some people think you're just worthy because you showed up. Yeah, I would say you have some human worth because you showed up, because you're breathing. But ultimately, what you do and how you perform and how you show up is your measurement of being a man. It isn't something that is just gifted to you. It's something that's earned, and it's earned every day through your ability to build up skill sets and resolve and training and provisions to be this kind of protector that we've been talking about for the past 5 years. And frankly speaking, an individual, a man who, I should say a male, who is not on the path to improving himself in these areas is less manly than one who is. And again, that's not a popular thought in popular doctrine, but it's the truth. When shit hits the fan and things go wrong, and there's a natural disaster or an emergency or a global pandemic, people look to the men, and they look to manly men. They don't look to the weaklings, the cowards, the men who are incapable. They look to the ones who are capable, strong, resolute. Therefore, we know that people are looking to manly men. So how do you become more manly in this, right? Here's how you do it. 4 steps. Number 1, some element of prediction. All right, you need to be able to anticipate what could potentially arise. Because if you're not thinking about these things and what could potentially come up, you're just kind of walking around, wandering around through life, and whatever happens, happens, and you will be less capable of dealing with a situation when it arises. This is why we talk about situational awareness, for example. When you go into a restaurant, which not many of us are right now, but when you do go into a restaurant, you should be sitting with your back against the wall. You should be looking at escape routes. You should be looking at anything that's out of the ordinary. There's a great book called Left of Bang that I would highly suggest that you guys read. The author's name escapes me right now, but the book is called Left of Bang, so definitely check that out. But this is about being situationally aware, and it's not about being paranoid. It's just about being prepared. And there's little things that you can do when you go into public or when you go into a restaurant, like sitting with your back against the wall so you can see everything. There's little things that you can do that aren't going to rule your life. In fact, they're not going to take any more time to do, to implement. It's just going to put you in a potentially better situation. Now, as your back's against the wall and you're in a restaurant, we're just using this as an example, what are you doing? You're scanning, you're looking for potential threats, you're looking for things that are out of the ordinary, that go against what the baseline of the mood is. They talk about that in the book Left of Bang. You're doing that because you don't want to be caught off guard. And I can't tell you how often I hear from men who say things like, oh, I didn't even see it coming, or I was caught off guard. Well, that means that you weren't anticipating it. You weren't thinking about it. You weren't scanning your environment to consider what could potentially go wrong. And again, if you're not doing that, if you're not anticipating, okay, what could potentially come up that would be a threat to me, my family, and my loved ones, then you will get caught off guard. You will find yourself wanting, when there's a violent encounter or a financial catastrophe or a global pandemic or some sort of health situation that you or a family member is dealing with, I don't want you to be caught off guard. And the best way to avoid that happening is to learn to predict and anticipate what could potentially go wrong. Now, we're problem solvers by design. Human beings in general are looking for problems because those problems represent a threat. But you can hone this skill, and that's what you should be doing. It's a skill set. You should be able to develop and articulate and get better and more efficient at predicting what could potentially go wrong. So look for those scenarios. I would also suggest that you surround yourself with individuals who know about these things, and they can point out what you should be looking for, whether that's law enforcement, military, first responders in a lot of ways, other first responders. There's courses and programs and things that you can take online and live when that starts opening up once again, where you can actually participate in some of these things. Tim Kennedy's organization, Sheepdog Response, has some great programs that are centered around situational awareness and how to deal with crisis and how to handle these things. And so you can train your ability to scan for threats and look at what's going wrong. So what I want you to do, and we'll just break this into steps, I guess you'd say, is whenever you're in an environment, whether it's your office or a new environment like a restaurant or a movie theater or just out in public at the grocery store or even in your car. I mean, I've seen videos where people get carjacked because they weren't scanning their surroundings when they were at a bank teller, for example. You need to anticipate, hey, if I was a criminal and I wanted to take advantage of individuals, what would I do? Put yourself in their shoes and you'll be maybe able to react accordingly. All right, so that's number one. Number two is training. All right, you started to work on the prediction, the anticipation of what could potentially go wrong. Now we get into training. And there's a lot of different training that you can get involved in. There's boxing and there's wrestling and there's jiu-jitsu and there's Krav and there's Muay Thai and there's all these other arts that you could get into, okay? And yeah, there's probably some that are better than others. I would say that wrestling and jiu-jitsu are strong skills to have, some sort of striking if you end up having to get into an altercation. Obviously, the goal is not to get into that position. That's why we talk about prediction as being step number one. But you ought to be training your body as a weapon. Yes, physicality. Yes, strength. Yes, stamina, losing weight, getting strong, building up your cardio. All of that is very, very important. And that's an element of training. So if you aren't doing that every single day, then you probably ought to consider what you can do to start moving your body and gaining some flexibility and building your muscle strength. Those are important things. And then on top of that, you should be training your body as a weapon. How do you throw a punch? How do you take a punch? If something goes to the ground, how do you engage and then disengage? These things are very, very important. And by the way, they're not wasted efforts. So if you end up never getting in a fight, congratulations. That's a good thing. But you're going to learn so much more about yourself and frankly life, because jiu-jitsu, wrestling, boxing, Muay Thai, kickboxing, all of these things are metaphors for life. strength, grit, fortitude, doing things when you don't want to, learning how to win, learning how to lose, learning to be creative. These things apply in other facets of your life. So it isn't wasted effort if you happen to never use it, which I would say congratulations. But again, it's not wasted. So look at martial arts. Strength training is very powerful, obviously, because that's going to help you get strong and be capable and be able to lift a car hood off your wife if that's the case, you get into an accident or something like that. I would recommend starting strength as a good resource for building strength, but there's many other programs. I'm using one right now called Mountain Tough Fitness, which is not a strength training program, but it's specifically designed for outdoorsmen, specifically hunters. And that one's called Mountain Tough Fitness, which is what I'm going through right now. So you can check that out as well. But there's a lot out there. The other thing I would say, I'm just checking a couple of things off here so I stay on top of this, is resourcefulness. All right, resourcefulness is such an important skill to have, and it's something that you really need to be training. It's amazing to me how often I will see a man who doesn't have a certain provision or something's not perfect, and it's like a roadblock. It's a barrier. It keeps him from doing what he wants to do because he sees this one little obstacle that frankly shouldn't derail him or keep him from driving on. You need to be resourceful. You need to look for opportunities. You need to look for ways to be creative in overcoming some of these obstacles that you may deal with. I, for example, like woodworking. That's one of my hobbies and one of my activities. And what I really enjoy doing with woodworking is salvaging and reclaiming old wood, old projects, and then repurposing them for what it is that I need. So, for example, right now, I've got my computer here, my mic and everything. It's set up and hooked up and sitting on my podcast desk, which happens to be a barn stall door that I found in the basement of our barn when we moved into this property. So I grabbed it out, cleaned it up, took all the hardware off, cleaned all that up, shined it up, got it looking good. I've got a grate right here, which you can't see, but it's just sitting right here, and that's the stall door. It's the grate. And I'm going to get a piece of glass, and I'm going to put it over that. I built a steel pipe frame for it. So again, repurposing this to make it functional for what I need. These shelves behind me, that was an old piece of wood that I was found again in the barn basement that I cut, I cleaned, I finished, and brought them in here. And you can see I got them hooked up. There's other things as well. You know, I'm constantly looking for, like, I have a couple of desks that I made for my boys. They were old shop desks. They were here again. I broke them apart, cut them down, changed them, tweaked them, adapted them, and I made one for my sons, each of my two oldest sons, Lego tables. So like I'm repurposing that stuff. That helps me be resourceful. Guys, resourcefulness is a very, very powerful skill that you can develop. And if you feel yourself getting hung up and snagged up on projects and tasks and things that you need to do, then maybe you're not as resourceful as you could be. Another great example is in the fitness world. So many guys talk to me about, I don't have a gym. It's like, well, who said you need a gym? I mean, a gym's nice, but you don't need a gym to get strong. You can have a tire. And people say, well, you need a box to step on. Well, I have a tire. So a box would be great, but I have a tire. So I can hit that with a sledgehammer. I can lift it up, set it down. I can roll it up hills. I can jump on it like I would a box. It's about being resourceful. Use what you have to create solutions for you and your family's problems. That's a skill that can be developed. Another thing, firearms. Are you training firearms? Look, you don't have to like firearms. You don't have to own a firearm. I would actually suggest that you do. That's a good thing. It's a healthy thing. Hopefully you'll never have to use it, but it would be nice to have it in case you had to use it. But are you doing firearms training? Are you shooting your guns? Are you taking instruction? Are you learning what you need to learn about that? And even now, there's online courses that you can take, and then you can go out to a shooting range or go out to a field or go out in your yard if you have space, and you can train. It's very, very important. I think it was Archaeolocus who said, we don't rise to the level of our expectations, we fall to the level of our training. So we as men have these egos at times, and they serve us in some ways. In a lot of ways, they actually serve us. But at the same time, they keep us back and keep us from training and doing the things that we should be doing. We believe that in a crisis, we'll by default step into that crisis because we saw Jason Bourne or James Bond do it on a movie somewhere. Guys, it doesn't work like that. unless you're training and getting the repetition and being exposed as closely as you can to real world scenarios. Tony Blauer, a friend of mine with No Fear, he does the No Fear podcast. But he's talked a lot about this, and he's got courses and programs and offerings available for you to deal with these types of threats when those situations arise. If you aren't training this stuff, you aren't going to step up to the plate. You just aren't. And you're going to put yourself and your loved ones in compromising situations. I don't want that to happen. So make sure you're training firearms, you're training martial arts, you're strength training, you're looking at becoming more resourceful. And the last one I wrote here, and of course, this isn't an exhaustive list, but the last thing I wrote down on here is wilderness survival. Can you survive in the wilderness? What's your skill set in the wilderness? Can you start a fire? Can you find water? Can you do some land navigation to find out where you are? Can you read a map? Can you use a compass? Can you set up a shelter? Can you start a fire? I think I already said that one. These are all skills that would be very, very important to know, to understand, and to be able to utilize. And by the way, this part can be fun, especially if you have kids, because you can go out in the yard and you go camping with the kids and not even bring a tent and see if you can set up a shelter. You can build a fire or have a fire building competition with them. You can learn to hunt. That's another skill set that I would say is worthy of developing. You can teach them how to cook that food, even on an open fire at a camp out. These are all valuable, valuable skills to have, and you can make it fun for you and your wife and your kids. It's a good thing, and it trains you and it trains them. So if you aren't having some sort of wilderness survival in your regiment of training and being prepared, then you're selling yourself short. I'm trying to give you as many resources as I can. I would say Creek Stewart is a great resource on wilderness survival. And of course, there's plenty more, but that's where I would start. All right, that's the training component. Again, that wasn't an exhaustive list, but I went through martial arts, firearms, resourcefulness, wilderness survival, and strength training, physical training of some sort. All right, so now we're predicting, right? We're anticipating and looking for threats and what could potentially go wrong. We've trained ourselves, or we are in the process of training ourselves to deal with those threats that we may have to deal with. The next component of this is provisions. All right, we've got prediction, we've got training, and now we've got provisions. You have to have provisions. Okay, these are financial provisions. This is food storage. This is firearms. These are ammunition. This is a bug out bag, a bug in bag. If you don't have these provisions taken care of, man, you're going to find yourself in a bad situation. So when it comes to food storage, if you didn't have any food, all right, the grocery stores are closed, which we're kind of experiencing. They may not be closed, but access to grocery stores is limited, and access to food is increasingly limited as well. So how much do you have in your house? Can you survive for a month, 6 months, a year? That's something to consider, right? We try to get to a year, 12 months of food storage. Now, I'm not saying we're going to eat like kings for 12 months. Of course not. But we'd be able to survive for 12 months. And you should have that level of provisions. And it's not difficult. I'm not telling you that you need to go spend $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever you need to spend. But each time you go to the grocery store or you buy food of some sort, just spend an extra $10, $15, $20 and buy 3 or 4 cans of tuna or other non-perishable items. Maybe it's fruit in a can. Like, buy these things and spend an extra $20 each time you go to the store, and you'll notice yourself over the course of several months really building up something that not only can you be proud of, but that you can rely on, and then you can take comfort in knowing that you are doing your job as a man. So when it comes to provisions, I would highly suggest that you go in right now and you start to inventory your provisions. What do you currently have? What do you need? And then how do you build that up? Also, financially, I mean, how many people have dealt with some real financial hardships right now? I mean, so much so that this $1,200 is quite literally saving them. The $1,200 we're getting back of our own money or other people's money from the government. It's like, look, if it's going to help you, then by all means, I mean, good. I hope it does. I hope you can make your mortgage payment or put some groceries on the table and some food in your kids' and wife's belly. But look, if you aren't getting your financial house in order, like, shame on you. Shame on you. I know that sounds harsh. I know that's going to rub people the wrong way, but really, like, if your financial house isn't in order, please use this moment in time as a wake-up call to get your shit together. I spent almost 10 years as a financial advisor, and I can't tell you how many people I met with who were living paycheck to paycheck. They were literally a week or less away from being broke. Come on, we can do better than that. Most of us have got into debt that we shouldn't get into. Most people don't track their income and expenses. Most people aren't making as much as they should be making because they aren't developing new skills or making themselves more equipped and more capable to earn a higher income. And it's sad. It's sad. I get it. I've been there, but I worked myself out of that position. And you need to be working yourself out of that position as well. Learn to provide value, offer a skill set, learn to charge and ask people to pay for your goods and your services and products, learn how to sell, learn how to market. All of these things are very important when it comes to a career, but also, are you setting money aside? Or are you spending every dollar that you earn? If you don't have 6 months of expenses, I'm not talking about income, I'm talking about expenses. If your monthly expenses are $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 a month, then you need 6 times that set aside, some in cash, some in the bank, to be able to handle being out of work for 6 months. Like, the people who have done this aren't as concerned as those who haven't during this situation. And if you're frantic and you're running around like a chicken with his head cut off, and you're nervous and you're scared and you're upset about the financial situation, like, how in the world are you going to be able to protect and provide and preside for your family? You're not. So fix it. Fix it. Now, granted, now might not be the time because you may not have any income coming in, but you can certainly track your income. You can certainly track your expenses. You can certainly start listening to podcasts that are specifically financially related. Maybe there's a course that you can look on, online programs that are even free in many cases, where you can start to get some financial literacy so you can get yourself out of the hole that you dug yourself into. It's critical that we do this. Very, very important. I talked about resourcefulness, also firearms and ammunition. Like, if you don't have a firearm in your house, maybe you ought to consider having a firearm in your house. I would have it secured and locked up and have training for you and your wife and your children if they're old enough. And then, of course, the accompanying ammunition. I mean, if you've got your Glock, your 9mm sitting on the shelf, and you have 20 rounds of 9mm, and that's it. Well, okay, great. What are you going to do when that's all gone, right? Also, having a rifle. You got to have a rifle. I think every man should have a rifle, so that if he has to go out into the wilderness and hunt, and by the way, I'm not saying anybody should break any sort of hunting laws or wilderness laws, anything like that. But look, if we're in a bad situation, like if things get really, really bad and you can't kill an animal to feed your family, like, shame. What a shame. That's a bad deal. Now, some people say, oh, it's never going to get that bad. Well, how do you know? You don't know. Right? All these people that talk about anti-hunting are like, well, why don't you just go to the grocery store like a normal human being? Well, now we're learning that some grocery stores are closed, provisions aren't available as they once were, and all of a sudden these people who know how to hunt and have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds of meat in the freezer from animals they harvested are actually not looking so insane to these people who otherwise wouldn't. You're putting yourself in compromising situations. You need to make sure that you have these provisions taken care of. And part of that is firearms, ammunition, learning how to hunt. That would fall under the training component, food storage, financial resources. And if you're prepared, you don't need to fear, right? You don't need to be so concerned. You don't need to make rash decisions. You're prepared. You're ready. This is what men need to be so they can stand again between themselves and destruction of their family. This is your job, and this is the outline and the framework and the roadmap to be able to do it. All right, and the last component, this is the fourth component. So we've got prediction, anticipation, step number 2, training, and these aren't in order, all right? These all go together simultaneously. The third one is building up your provisions, and the fourth one is your strategies. All right, do you have strategies in place? If there's a natural disaster, how are you going to handle that? If this road that you're used to traveling on, your family's used to traveling on, is closed or shut down or inaccessible, then how do you get home or wherever you need to go? If somebody, an intruder, breaks into your house, what is your protocol? What is your system for being able to deal with that? If there's a fire in the home, do you have rallying points for your family, both inside and outside? And by the way, do they know these things? If you know them and they don't know them, it's useless. Like, you have to clue them in on what's going on. You're running drilling scenarios. You have rallying points. If you guys become separated, let's say you're at work or somewhere out in public and your family's at home, and there's some sort of catastrophic event, how do you get home? And where are you going to meet? If cell phone towers are down, and you can't call them on the phone, what are you going to do? How do you contact them? How do you get a hold of them? And where do you go? Where do they go? These are the kinds of conversations and strategies that you need to be planning for. These are the scenarios that you need to think out when it comes to prediction and anticipation. Because if you start predicting what could potentially go wrong, then you build in the strategy that needs to be built in so that you can accomplish what it is that you're meant to accomplish. So look at these things: emergency escapes, rallying points. If there's natural disasters, do you have a bug in bag? Do you have a bug out bag? If you have to go somewhere, where are you going? Where have you stored stuff? Is there certain places that you can go where you can get provisions should you need them down the road? A lot of people tend to look at this and think, oh, this is like alarmist thinking. Maybe I'm thinking of catastrophe. Maybe I'm thinking of worst case scenario. Maybe nothing like this ever happens. But isn't it good to be prepared just in case it does? I mean, I think this is a real wake-up call to realize for many Americans and frankly people across the planet that they aren't adequately prepared for these things. They don't have the financial resources. They don't have the skill sets. They don't have the training. And there are a lot of people who are very, very concerned about their ability to stay alive. And frankly, there's a lot of people who should be concerned about it because we're finding out that these people are not as capable as they could be. And it could be you, by the way. And it could be me. There's things that I need to shore up on my end too. Because I wanted to share this with you because I don't want to just show problems. I don't want to talk about all the things that are wrong. I want you to actively work towards solving the problems, addressing the problems, and doing something in a meaningful and significant way so that you can be that type of protector who stands between his family and destruction. Again, the quote, I'll pull it up here. The real man gains renown by standing between his family and destruction, absorbing the blows of fate with equanimity. Guys, that is your role. That is your responsibility. If you're looking for a great book, this is a good one right here, Manhood in the Making. I will suggest that it's not an easy read, but basically this gentleman studied and researched different cultures throughout much of time in history to get an idea of what they believed masculinity was. And there's striking similarities between most cultures throughout all of history, some cultures not even being introduced to each other, which suggests that maybe masculinity isn't a social construct like popular doctrine would have you believe, but that it's a biological construct and it's supported societally, supported by the people because it works. So as you can see, well, maybe you can't see, but I've got this thing tabbed up, highlighted. There's just so much great information in here. So again, the book's Manhood, turned out a little bit because of lighting. Manhood in the Making by David Gilmour. Again, your job is to stand between your family and destruction with equanimity, which by the way means mental calmness. How do you maintain mental calmness? You get better at predicting and anticipating what could potentially arise. You train for these scenarios that you've identified. You have the provisions on hand necessary to deal with them. And then you develop the strategies that you and your family will utilize to keep yourself safe, protected, and thriving. All right, guys, that's all I've got for you today. I'm going to be back with Jack Carr, I believe, is our interview next week on Tuesday. He just finished up and released, or will be releasing on April 14th, his newest book, which is called Savage Son, the third installment of the James Reese series. So that's Mr. Jack Carr, former Navy SEAL and incredible author. And I believe that the James Reese series is now being made into either a TV show or a TV series. So be on the lookout for that as well. But that'll be with Jack Carr. And then, of course, we've got our other podcasts throughout the week. Gentlemen, I'm glad that you're here. I would also suggest that you look into our exclusive brotherhood, the Iron Council, which is a digital band of brothers, 500 plus men, all working towards objectives and these types of things, even that we talked about today. And we're holding each other accountable to ensure that we're doing what we said is important. So guys, I'll let you get going and we'll be back on Tuesday. But until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.